Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. We're going to talk about Zakah because we are in the last few nights of Ramadan. Many people might be wondering how they can give Zakah, what Zakah is, and what sort of amount they need to give. So with me is Dr. Shabir Ali. Dr. Shabir, let's talk Zakah.
Sure.
So what is Zakah, first of all?
Okay, the word zakah in Arabic means purity, and it is applied to the institutionalized charity in Muslim societies. In the Quran itself, the Quran says, "Wa'atu zakah," give charity. So why is it applied to this? It may have two connotations here, according to Muslim scholars. One is that, when we go about our daily earnings and so on, it may be that there is a question about the earning. Is it really fully legitimate or not? Like, let's say somebody went in and clocked their time, but they clocked it wrong, or something like this. There's something questionable about your earnings. So while on the whole you're taking every precaution to make sure that your earnings are totally halal and legitimate, something could have crept in there that doesn't really belong to you. So by giving charity, you are actually shaving off whatever fat has accumulated on that meat of legitimate earning for you. So that's one aspect to the purity. The other aspect, and perhaps this is as important, if not even more important, that when we give charity, we are actually cleansing ourselves of avarice. This desire to hold on to what we have and say it is mine, but by knowing that we have to give and then giving because we have to, it then puts us into like a new phase of doing things. Like it turns the table on us and says, okay, now I am a payer, I am a giver, even though by necessity, but now you might be in the mood to give even more.
So we know that Zakah was instituted pretty early in Islamic history. What does it look like today? Because, today people have stocks and they have property and, it's very difficult to figure out what you actually own and how much you should give.
Yes, and this calls for the work of Muslim scholars to exercise what we call ijtihad, or effort to arrive at new rulings given the new and changing circumstances, while at the same time capturing the original principles. So in the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, it seems that collecting zakat was a very simple matter. The zakat collector went around, he found that somebody had 40 sheep, so he would ask them to give one, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, don't take the best of the lot, so you take like an average one. So it was very simple, like 1 out of 40, and that's how we have our 2.5% rule. So it's basically now, as we understand it, generally 2.5% of your net liquefiable assets at the end of 1 year, and then following each year after that. So how do you figure out all these new issues? They could be like RESPs, for example, RRSPs. So generally, the scholars say that if you have access to the funds, you can take the funds out, even if it implies some penalty for taking the funds out. But basically, you do have access to the funds. You can. Then you have to calculate your zakat obl at the time based on the idea that you could have taken out the funds. So it's basically yours minus all of the penalties and so on. So that's your total assets minus all of your liabilities, and then you pay. But then when it comes to liabilities, they say do not include all of your liabilities. They have in mind especially the fact that homeowners in our modern estates generally are obviously the well-to-do persons, but they may have a hefty mortgage owing on their homes. So they say don't include, or shall we say exclude, don't minus the entire debt owing on your house, but just minus the debt that is owing for the coming year. So 12 months of mortgage payments can be deducted from your assets to arrive at your net assets, out of which you will give your 2.5%. So with stipulations like this, they're looking at the new and changing circumstances, and they're looking at the spirit of the original law, and they're thinking, look, if we allow the homeowner to exclude the entire liability owing on the house, then nobody will be left to give zakat. And the poor people who have no house in the first place, and are needy of some charity, will not find a suitable donor to give them.
Now, Dr. Shabir, these days we don't have a central religious authority collecting the zakah and giving it out to people or individuals or organizations that are in need. So how do we decide with the money that we have where to give our zakah?
So the Quran in the 9th chapter, in the 60th verse, gives us a number of categories, 8 categories of expenditure for zakat. And again, much of these is having to do with the nature of life at the time, or at least one has to do with the nature of society at the time, and most of the others apply to our current situation. So we have the poor and the needy. So there's a distinction between the two, according to classical Muslim scholars, but time does not permit me to get into the details of that now. Let me say that the poor is the person who is like abjectly poor. The needy one may be a person who has a source of income, but is not sufficient to make ends meet. So that in a nutshell is what it is. So the person who is encumbered by debt, that person may have good surroundings and so on, but they have a major debt to pay off. That person can receive zakat. To free the captives, so people were they were slaves in ancient societies. The zakat funds could have been used to buy off a slave and to set that slave free. The people who are working in administering the funds of zakat, they can be paid from out of the funds as well. A reasonable sum of, obviously, we're all considerate of administration costs. They shouldn't be too high. But stipulations like this, one of the important categories in this respect is wafir riqab, as we have already mentioned, but also wafi sabilillah, and in the way of God. So the way of God is the broad category that can be used in some contexts, to spread the message of Islam to the wider world, missionary work from among Muslims, for example.
So could that include our TV show, for example?
Yes, the scholars would say that a TV broadcast that is meant for propagating or promoting the message of Islam would be a deserving recipient of zakat under this category. It's
because sometimes Muslims are not sure about where to give zakat. So I'm glad that you've clarified that. And we'd like to ask viewers, of course, to contribute to Let the Quran Speak with their zakat funds if they have it. So Dr. Shabir, do you have anything else to add on that point?
Yeah, one category I didn't mention was for the purpose of bringing the hearts close. So this could be, if we're thinking of a non-Muslim who might be given charity, and by giving them charity, they know that Islam is beneficial and Muslims are benefactors, so they might be inclined more towards Islam and Muslims. Or there might be a new Muslim who embraced Islam, and that new Muslim may be cut off from his or her family, and they need the support of the Muslim community. So zakat can be given to that person, and we're not going to look into the finer points of whether this person is poor and needy. We're just giving in order to make that person feel at home within the new Muslim community, his new family.
Thank you for sharing that with Dr. Shabir. And I guess this is a time for us to give zakah. If anybody is interested in giving zakah to Let the Quran Speak, our website is quranspeaks.com.